Corruption Watch. And compliance with the right to information law demands ongoing discussion. It's fundamental to transparent governance and anti-corruption. You're probably asking why. Because some public institutions demand fees that violate the limits set by Parliament in the Fees and Charges Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2022, Act 1080. In Act 1080, the cost of a photocopy or printout on one page or part of an A4 size paper should not exceed 38 pesos if the request for information was made under the Right to Information Act 2019, Act 989. However, the Electoral Commission, EC, the Office of the Registrar of Companies, ORC, and the Ghana Meteorological Agency charge fees contrary to those approved for RTI requests drawing powers from other laws. For example, the EC is charging a total of 9,250 Ghana cedis for access to audited accounts of political parties, justifying the charges under the Political Parties Act 2000, Act 574, even though Act 574 does not prescribe how much should be paid for the audited accounts of political parties. For its part, the GMET recently asked some RTI applicants to pay in excess of 10,000 Ghana cedis, 10,400 Ghana cedis for rainfall and weather data. These demands create a conflict of laws. We will examine the effect of this conflict on a fundamental right under the 1992 Constitution of Ghana and the broader implications for transparency and accountability and a fight against corruption. Stay tuned because, Corruption Watch, sponsored by the European Union in collaboration with our partners, the Ghana Democratic Development CDD Ghana, Transparency International Ghana, formerly Ghana Integrity Initiative, the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, the Africa Center for International Law and Accountability, ASILA, and media platforms Joy FM and Adum FM.
To the left, to the right, to the right, to the left, to the left, to the right, to the right, to the left.
And it's anti-corruption school moment today, as hinted in the opening remarks. We have a problem to resolve. It's a problem of different fee regimes colliding. And the big question is, can a public institution rely on its own fee-setting law or administrative schedule to impose charges that effectively restrict a citizen's right to information under the RTI Act? Hopefully, my guest will help us understand the question by the end of the conversation. And this morning we've been joined by Zachariah Tanko Musa, who is a lecturer and a lawyer.
Our money, wanna money, our money, wanna money, our money, wanna money, our money, wanna money. Yeah, Sydney, je suis arrivé. Qu'est-ce que c'est nation soit Sénégal? Arrêtez le babadage. C'est moi le tu. Sydney back again. Yeah. Now no in it back. What you say now? Squad alongside Man and Morris, Babyface, what you say now? Our money, Africa money, I got the chop on fuga. Wanna money, our money, Africa money, I got the chop on fuga. Ide chop on nyanga, I got the chop on nyafu. Wow, I got the chop on nyanga. Ide chop on fuga, I got the chop on nyanga. Boom, I got the chop on.
And we've been joined by Zachariah Tanko Musa, who is lecturer and lawyer in studio. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, my brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. I believe you're doing very well this morning.
Fantastic.
Great,
I just
great.
envy you that you are in Ghana jersey and I'm not in mine.
Don't worry. I know you have one.
I have one, yeah.
So after everything, then...
I'll wait.
Wait, let's celebrate our victory in advance. But before we get into the discussions, let me provide you with some background. So, in a letter dated 21st May 2026, Corruption Watch journalist Frederick Esiama wrote to the Electoral Commission to request copies of audited accounts and financial statements submitted by registered political parties to the Commission. The request was made pursuant to the RTI Act. In a letter dated 3rd June 2026, the Commission responded to Frederick Esiama asking him to make a payment of 9,250 Ghana cedis to the Commission's account at the Bank of Ghana before receiving the requested information. It is recalled that in 2008, the EC was ordered by a human rights court in Accra to make public all assets and audited statements of accounts of political parties in the country. And this followed a suit filed by private citizen Lolan Ekosego Moses and pressure group Citizens Ghana Movement, who prayed the court to compel the Commission to enforce the provisions of the law that mandates all political parties to submit their annual financial statements to the Commission. Previously, Corruption Watch journalists had been asked to pay the applicable fees for searches by the ORC, even though they had made their request pursuant to the RTI Act. And now, we know that the Ghana Meteorological Agency recently asked some RTI applicants to pay in excess of 10,000 Ghana cedis for rainfall and weather data. Benjamin Tinkran, who is a freelance journalist and editor of the media startup The Treasure, will be joining us shortly to provide some information on the demand by GMET. Okay, he'll be helping us understand, for instance, when he made that request to GMET and what it was about, and the justification that GMET provided when he was asked to pay 10,400 Ghana cedis. But first, let's get into the conversation with Zachariah Tanko Musa, who's joined us in studio. So, first of all, you are a lawyer, you're a journalist, you're an anti-corruption campaigner. The demands made by the EC, ORC, and GMET, are they lawful?
Thank you, Winston. For me, it's almost like a tragedy for me when I hear these things because of the enormous effort that had gone into, if you like, building the capacity of institutions to appreciate the whole philosophy or principle behind the concept of access to information, which is a fundamental right guaranteed by the highest law of the country, which is the Constitution of Ghana. And this whole idea that people or institutions think that they have the right to be custodians of information that is almost a national resource. It belongs to everybody else. The only reason why you have access to that information is because you are rendering, if you like, a public service for us.
Okay.
And that information is with you to keep interest for us. So we
set out for you.
But yes, but you see, the concept of the access to information is to make information readily available. In other jurisdictions, they are even moving away from
38 pesos per A4 sheet.
Yeah, it's almost nothing. But the difficulty that they are having is that, you see, it's either ignorance, which would be a tragedy, or they don't care, because the RTI Act overrides any other existing law.
Okay,
it is supreme.
I'll get back to you on that, on the RTI law overriding any existing law, because we've been joined by Benjamin Tinkran, who is a freelance journalist and editor of the media startup The Treasure, because he requested information from the GMET. Benjamin, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Winston, and good morning to Lawyer Tanko.
Great. So first, when did you make your request to GMET, and what was it about?
Right. So just a brief background. Treasure is a media startup that focuses on reporting on natural resources, environmental issues, and climate change. So in March, we submitted an RTI to GMET requesting for some data on rainfall and weather patterns. After 15 days, as the law requires, we had no help from GMET. We decided to give them some ample time because of the weight of the information that we requested. But after a month, they had not responded at all. So we further went on to submit an internal appeal. And GMET got back, that was in April, saying that our initial request was being worked on and we will have to pay some amount for the information, which for us as a media setup was really understandable until we saw the amount. So they were requesting for 10,400 Ghana cedis for a 7-page document and one Excel spreadsheet.
7-page document?
Yes.
Oh. That's just like...
And one Excel spreadsheet.
Less than 10 cedis for the 7-page document. So help me understand, what justification did they give for the 10,400 cedis?
Well, so it appeared they were charging us based on the parameters. Because it was rainfall data, they were, charging us per the parameter of the data we requested. And they mentioned that, in their initial response, they cited the fees and charges regulations passed by Parliament, but they were unable to tell us if there's any different law backing that particular, amount that they gave us.
So did you pay, or you gave up on getting the information?
I mean, listen, there is an absurd amount, as I mentioned, for a startup media. At the moment, we, are still consulting, although it's been quite some time now, to know the way forward, because it's an interesting, decision from GMX.
All right, Benjamin Tinkrine, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Let me get in studio with you, Zakaria Musa Tanko, because you're talking about the RTI overriding all other laws. So the fee is 38 pesos per A4, per sheet. That's A4 sheet. So help us understand. In his case, 10,400. So if I do the calculation of 10,400, divided by 0.38. That's like what? It's supposed to be a 27,368 page document.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Section 75 of the Act, which talks about the fees and charges, is quite clear that the fees and charges are not required to be paid on certain grounds. For the reproduction of personal information, for the reproduction of information which is in the public interest, or information that should have been provided under this act anyway. That information that they have, that they were requesting for, technically they are supposed to put that information out there on their website. The information that he's asking for, is that information not in the public interest for people to know about some of these things? So that's why I'm worried, because if it is ignorance, it is even more dangerous. With all the resources that have been pumped into building the capacity of institutions to appreciate the role the right to access information plays in a democratic society, if they are still ignorant about that, then it's worrying. And if it's just pure recklessness, then it shouldn't be allowed to persist, because the information that the person is asking for, you are supposed to even put it out there. You haven't put it out there. They are requesting for the information, and you are asking them this money. And what they usually argue is that, our mother law, which is the law actually establishing that organization or institution, says that we should charge you ABCD, which is almost always above what the fees and charges actually allows them to charge. So they argue that. But the RTI has made it clear that the RTI Act, when it comes to access to information, anything that has to do with access to information overrides any other law. That's very simple.
Great.
And to that, and even generally, if you take the principle of conflict of laws, any law that deals with specificity, it's specific to an issue, would override the ones that are general.
Okay.
And the one that has to do with access to information is the RTI law. So it overrides any other law.
Now, could it also be that these institutions are just trying to recover costs?
Yeah, but the RTI law says that when people request for information, it because you are a public institution, you are provided with resources to do what you are doing anyway. And because of the role the right to information plays in, corruption, exposing corruption, and making sure that we are holding people accountable. The idea is not to make access difficult, it's to make it easy for people to access information. So if you are going to be asking money, and that is going to deter people from actually going for the information, then the whole purpose of pushing for the RTI this thing is defeated. So it's not about you charging. That's why they said you can charge for the reproduction. It's not for your time. Sometimes they think that, well, a lot of efforts, human resources would be put into generating it. No, but that's not what the law says.
Let me get your thoughts on this, because it appears to me that this constitutional right to information is becoming conditional on one's ability to pay.
Which shouldn't be the case. It is absolutely unacceptable. The fundamental right that has been guaranteed in the Constitution is a right that overrides anything. In any case, the Constitution is supreme to the very laws that they want to use, which is a subordinate law, an act of Parliament.
Okay.
The Constitution is supreme to that. But even when it comes to the subordinate law, the act of Parliament, and the RTI Act is almost a par with the laws that they want to use. But the RTI law is current.
Okay.
And it overrides those existing ones.
Let's look at this, because you talk about when it comes to conflict of laws, you look at specificity. Now, if the RTI Act conflicts with another law that imposes fees, which one should prevail? Bearing in mind that they also have their own laws that says, if you want information from me, this is what I do.
Yeah, it's because the RTI law is specific to access to information. Once the person comes under access to information, the RTI law would override your fees and charges that is contained in your act. Because they are all acts of Parliament, and they are all on the same pedestal. But because this is specific to what the person is requesting for, it would override your act that is almost general.
Okay, I'll get to how to cure this, but let me just get your thoughts on the suggestion that maybe Parliament should establish maximum fees for information requested under the RTI Act.
Well, Parliament has already done that. Remember, before Parliament came out with the fees and charges, that was where we were having the challenges where the EC and Minerals Commission were asking for some exorbitant amount because Parliament hadn't then come out and they were hiding behind that. But even then, when they were doing that, when the cases went to the Commission said you were wrong. And some of these cases had even gone to court and the court had said that you were wrong in charging those exorbitant. So Parliament had made those provisions. It's just that, like you said, people are trying to generate IGF. And so for them, it's all about money. But they are not looking at the whole philosophy, the whole concept behind access to information and how that can help us cure one of the insidious problems we have in this country, which is corruption and transparency and accountability.
There's another school of thought that actually suggests, and you've made a point here, you've talked about the fact that when the information is in the interest of the public, and journalists, researchers and CSOs would request information in the interest of public, under those circumstances, should they receive fee waivers?
So the law doesn't make any specific provisions for fee waivers for journalists. But like I said earlier on, it makes provisions for waiving it for people who are asking for information that is in the public interest, or if you are an indigent. Now, the information that journalists are asking for, basically, what are they going to use the information for? To inform and educate. And so it's in the public interest. But sometimes they argue that you have the situation where some of these media houses are also into what? Business. The issue of commerce and all those things. But that still doesn't take away the fact that if it is in the public interest, then it can be waived. But that the law has not actually made that exemption for journalists. It made it for everybody else. Now, one of the challenges that people have argued about, if you make exemption for journalists, who is a journalist? Then you have to go into interpreting who is a journalist, and then for CSOs into who is actually engaged in a CEO work and all that. So the principle is basically that make it as much as possible very, 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 very low, so that it doesn't serve as a deterrent to people to go into this, because people are willingly trying to get information to help to hold institutions accountable. So if you're going to put any direct or indirect impediment in their way, they will throw their hands in despair and go away, and that is not something that we should encourage in a democratic society.
I like that. That's something we shouldn't encourage. But also the bit about journalists here, because you ask who is a journalist and all of those challenges, the law is there. But you are a lawyer. Is it difficult to define who a journalist is? Well, I know that debate has been going on for a very long time now.
Well, now UNESCO is saying let's move away from this whole idea of who is a journalist and rather ask the question, who is performing the functions of a journalist?
Okay.
And that is where you have all sorts of people. You have people who are citizen journalists, you have bloggers and all those things. Are they performing the functions of a journalist? In other words, are they informing and educating? If they are informing and educating and they are performing the functions of a journalist, then how do you deny them the right that everybody else? Remember, the right to freedom of expression and freedom of speech is a right that is guaranteed to everybody else. And it is a residue of that right that journalists actually use. So it's an age-old, if you like, debate about who is a journalist. But the easiest way to look at it is who is a professional journalist. That is where we can differentiate between the professional journalist and the citizen journalist. And that's where we need to push our people to be more professional, because that's the only thing that would differentiate you from people who, when they see something on the street, they will post it irrespective of the sensitivities involved, irrespective of the national security implications.
Okay. Zachariah Tanko Musa, finally, how do we curb this problem?
Well, I think the way to curb this problem is for the RTI Commission to start, enforcing their powers in a way that sends a very clear signal to institutions that the RTI law is a very important law that would help our democracy to thrive. So if you're going to put any impediments in the way of achieving an effective and efficient, access to information regime, then according to the law, they will deal with you, because they have the authority and the right to be able to impose, if you like, some administrative fines, and they have done that. But the tragedy is that when they administer that administrative charges, people are not paying. And people are not paying out of their pocket. So people are negligently or recklessly refusing to give information and throw their hands at, so what? I don't give, so what? At the end of the day, if my institution is fine, it doesn't come out of my pocket. That's why we have to go back to the provisions in the RTI law which actually says that if you, as an individual, you recklessly refuse or fail to provide information that you are supposed to be provided, you can be surcharged as an individual. And that's the only way we can promote access to information and make sure that it is holding our institutions accountable, promoting transparency, and that's the best way we can promote a thriving democracy.
Zachariah Tanko Musa is a journalist and lawyer and also a lecturer. Thank you very, very much for joining us this morning.
We want you to join us in the classroom to provide the practical aspect, blending practice with academia.
Oh, I mean, sometimes I'm invited, I go.
Yeah.
I go and, have conversations with them. But,
we need it more than ever before now.
Okay, I'll try. Now that you've said it, I'll try.
Yeah.
I'll try. Thank you very, very much. Look, all of us in our small way can help in the fight against corruption. And so you can interact with Corruption Watch on social media through the following channels. On Facebook is Corruption Watch Ghana. On Twitter is Corruption Watch or CW Ghana. And then on Instagram, Corruption Watch _GH. On YouTube, Corruption Watch Ghana. Their website is cddgh.org/corruption-watch-Ghana-CW. You can reach them on 055 220033. Their WhatsApp number 055 220033, and their email address sm@cw-ghana.org. #Wanamoni, #Ghana Abre. We're grateful to our partners. Corruption Watch is brought to you by the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII, and the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, as well as the African Center for International Law and Accountability, ACILA, and the media platforms Joy FM and Adom FM, and sponsored by the European Union.